Okay, Inappropriate Earl is back. We took a couple weeks off for the holidays. Plus, I couldn't get anyone to come over to my house. You know how I operate. But today, if you're going to come back for Sweeps Week, this is the guest to have because he's one of my favorite people in LA comedy, which, as you know, I don't have a lot of favorite people. It's a bunch of jackals and vipers in this business. This guy's been one of the good ones from day one of knowing him. He's proof that you can be a nice person and be successful. Put your hands together for Mr. Jake Weisman.
Hi. I assume the camera's pointed right at me.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, great.
This is not the Rogan podcast. This is very, I'm a one-man unit. I may get up at various points to make sure the sound is still on. That's because great. I don't have a red band. And you're looking around at my decor. That is berry jelly.
I'm mostly noticing the hockey stuff.
Well, I have to have one hobby to divulge myself of the negativity from stand-up comedy.
I'm an enormous hockey fan.
Oh, wow.
I don't think we ever talked about this. That's kind of why I'm like, oh, maybe we should talk about this.
No, we're going to talk about corporate.
Sure.
On Comedy Central. Many of you know I've had a love-hate relationship with Comedy Central, but...
As does everyone in comedy.
But they gave me everything through Roast Battle, so I have love toward Comedy Central. But part of the reason why I love doing this podcast is like someone like you I've known for 10 years maybe, but...
I think so, yeah.
You know, we not on a lot of the same shows for whatever reason. Different circuits, I guess. So I know you, but I don't know you.
Yeah, that's why it's fun to get to know someone while other people are watching.
And I would have never assumed you were a hockey fan.
I know. I think most people, most people think I'm a pot dealer and someone who played with Barbies as a kid. And so it's like, it's weird. I don't know. I feel like the perception, and I feel like most people have to deal with that, where it's like, inside my brain, I'm a totally different person than how people are perceiving me, and I feel like that's most of my life. I feel like it's most of everyone's life. It's like, people are like, no, you're like that. I'm like, no, I'm not like that. I'm like a totally weird person. But yeah, I just grew up playing sports, because I could run so fast when I was a kid. I just could, you know?
Right.
And so so my parents put me into sports at like 4 or 5. I'm from New York, and I would just play every sport ever, and I was kind of like a weird, sensitive little bitch, but I could play sports, so they were like, okay, you're cool. And then because the Rangers won the cup in 1994, I was 11 years old. And so that's so formative, that moment when they won. I mean, that just like is everything. When they won the cup and breaking the 54, year drought and everything, that was just everything to me. So hockey always became, well, hockey's just a whole different thing. But like sports were just everything, and my dad loved that I played them, and it's like how we talk. If he's like, I'm mad at the Giants, he's mad at me. You know what I mean? Like that's how, older men kind of relate to their kids a lot of the time. But hockey is just, to me, what I like about it is it's the best sport by far, but nobody really knows about it. To me, it's the most tactile. Like, you go to a game and it's like, there's sound, there's like almost taste, there's like, you're cold, like, and so fast, and it kind of isn't represented well on TV because the puck is hard to see on TV. Yeah. And the players' faces are often covered up and moving so fast, but to me, it's by far the best game. And whenever someone talks to me about hockey, it's kind of how I feel when I'm in a random place and I find out there's a Jew there. I'm like, oh, cool, we can talk, we relate.
I mean, I tell people hockey's like Kiss. Like, Kiss is probably not the best band musically, but you see them live, and you're like, wow, this is the greatest band of all time. Mm-hmm.
Maybe I need to see them live then.
Well, not anymore. It's not. I'm the biggest Kiss fan on earth, but it's tough.
I understand.
I mean, they're in their 60s, Gene and Paul. I don't expect them to sound, like they did when they're 30 or look, but they're still wearing the same outfits, and it just, we all age. And,
we all age. We have to know. We have to know when our time is up. I feel like that's so hard for so many people, for athletes, for musicians, for comedians. It's like, at some point, the magic is gone.
Well, I just with Kiss, it's Paul can't really sing too well anymore. Gene's a little bigger, and it's just kind of like it's sad because I want to remember Kiss. Like when I see Ray Liotta in that Chantix commercial.
Oh God.
Like, once again, I know we all age, but it's like, what happened to you, dude?
It's also just when I see Ray Liotta and all those commercials now, I'm like, how many kids do you have that we don't know about? Like, because why are you doing this?
Yeah, I mean,
something's wrong.
You can't need money.
You're in Goodfellas. Those residuals alone must be pretty good.
And that's the Ray Liotta I want to remember, like the good-looking, just like. I mean, that's a good-looking dude. Now it's just like you're doing voiceover gigs.
Well, yeah. Now it's like you really need all the medicine you're advertising. Like it's like he's doing it just to get free medicine. It seems like.
But I'm trying to get people to go to a hockey game live.
It's everything. It absolutely converts people. I've seen it convert people. Like, because people are like, oh, right, hockey, that sport that a lot of people seem to like in Canada. But then you go and you're just like, I have to go back. Like, I remember making my mother go when I was young, and then she just got obsessed with the fighting. And so if there wasn't a fight, she didn't like it. That's all she wanted to see was men beat the shit out of each other on like skates, It's a great game. It's for everyone.
Well, I mean, it's funny, in LA in the 80s, the Kings weren't on TV a lot, even though they were very good.
Mm-hmm.
They just, unfortunately for them, they had the misfortune of being around the Showtime Lakers, where it's just no one wanted to watch Marcel Dion. So I actually got into hockey through watching the Rangers on WOR.
Oh, really?
Because for whatever reason, we got WOR out here.
New York just dominates everything, yeah.
And they had this player by the name of Barry Beck, who was, he had this Jew fro, I guess you would call it. He was just bigger than everyone. He was the best player on the Rangers. No one would fight him. And I just became obsessed with him because he just stood out. And the fighting, of course, is what...
Oh, yeah.
Because in the 80s, it was like... I sound so old, but like back then it was just like crazy. Like,
yeah, it's unfortunate now that there's all these like documentaries and books about like how the enforcers are getting the same kind of brain damage that every football player gets. It makes me feel like it's like, oh man, I understand ethically I'm on weird ground here by saying that we need to keep fighting in the NHL as long as it goes, but it's just the best.
Well, they had that documentary on Derek Bugard, who the Boogeyman, who. They showed a scan of his brain, and I guess like you and I probably have like 4 or 5 dark spots on our brain right now. He had like 20. So it's just, and he was, he's a small town Canadian boy.
Yeah. And
last year he's with the Rangers. He's just roaming around Manhattan. He was just like Tom Hanks and Big. Like, where am I? And I mean, like, I feel the same feeling you do. Is like, I love watching these guys fight. I know. It's the same thing with the UFC.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, there was a bloody fight 2 weeks ago. It's like, wow, this is great. And then I'm like, oh boy.
Yeah, what are you supposed to do ethically? I don't know. I mean, it's these people choose to do it, but then it's sort of like, is it their only way they can make money? And would I still like it if it weren't? Yeah, it's like UFC being so popular, being the fastest or like the biggest growth in sports in the last 10 years, it seems like, oh, I guess people like to watch violence, I guess that's what that tells us.
I mean, it really hit home to me when the first celebrity I had on this podcast, and I don't get a lot of big ones, to be frank. I get told no by most people. But was Don Fry, and Don fought in the first UFC. Like the very first one. Now I think they're at UFC 233. And that's not even counting the Fox cards that don't count. So they've probably done 400 main UFC cards. He was in the first 3, I think. And when he got up after the podcast, he could barely get up. Yeah. And it was like, wow.
I used to go to my dad had a small business, and he used to advertise in the Post and the Daily News in New York. And so sometimes they would give him tickets to the Golden Gloves. Right. So I'd go see it in like the adjacent Madison Square Garden thing, and it was like unbelievable. It was the best experience I've ever had. And seeing the female boxers they were even nastier than the men. It was just awesome. But then I remember one time I saw Jake LaMotta.
Oh.
You know, I saw Jake LaMotta. He's dead now, I saw him like probably like 10 years before he died, just sort of roaming around, and I was like, oh, like everyone's coming up and be like, hey Jake, and it's like, but he wasn't a man anymore.
Right.
Like it's just like, oh, it wasn't worth it. Like it's like so unbelievably devastating. Yeah, a great movie exists because of him, and I'm sure he felt some joy, but it just is sort of like, what's happening here? And I watched the documentary on the Arturo Gotti and Gotti, and I forget the guy, Mickey whatever, the guy
Mickey Ward.
Mickey Ward. Yeah, I watched that documentary about the Gotti Ward trilogy, and it's like Gotti was either murdered or killed himself, and Ward is just like dumb. Like it's just like oh fuck, these are our heroes, but I love it. So what are you gonna do?
Oh, I mean, I'm the same way because I grew up like late 70s, early 80s, which was probably the pinnacle of heavyweight boxing. You know, you had prime Frazier, prime Ali, prime George Foreman, and then even the second tier guys were like, it just sucked for them to be in that era.
Yeah.
They were like Ernie Shavers.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
But I was obsessed with this guy by the name of Tex Cobb, who ended up being a pretty good actor after his boxing. And he was just a white guy who could take enormous punishment and laugh at you. He made Howard Cosell quit announcing boxing because he fought Larry Holmes. And for 15 rounds, I don't think Tex Cobb threw a punch. He just wanted to see if he could survive. Oh, man, and he was laughing at Larry Holmes, just like, hit me again. And Howard Cosell was like, I can't take this anymore. But I saw him a couple years after his prime kickboxing at this place in the Reseda called the Country Club. Uh-huh. I was like, wow. And he was just like gone. And this was before he really started acting. And I was like, dude. Is it worth it?
Well, it's interesting. It's like, should life be like sort of fast and brilliant and over quickly, or should it be slow and steady and not that exciting? It's not that you have to make that choice, but sometimes I wonder what is the best thing. Especially since we're comedians and like, you know, we do something kind of transgressive and weird with our lives. Like, is it amazing to kind of like just be this shooting star, like give everything, like kind of sacrificing your mental health and physical health, which I feel like sometimes comedians do.
Oh yeah.
Not only with drugs, but just being up late and then getting insomnia and just the mental struggle definitely has an effect on your physical health. Is it worth it? Am I supposed to just want to live till 85 and like slowly deteriorate and just be alive for a long time, or just live like fast and just have like 45 years?
I mean, that's why I have to play hockey. I mean, because it is a depressing business we're in. Mm-hmm. You know, even if you're successful, like, you know, like I'm sure, I mean, we're going to get into corporate. But like with Roast Battle, I thought, oh, this will be the time of my life. I'm on TV for the first time ever. No. 5 nights and 6 days, which, you know, when you go 13 years with 0 TV time, I'm like, I should be orgasming.
I know.
But it was also my first time experiencing politics and that kind of maneuvering, which I never. When you go so long without success, you don't care. You don't think you care about the politics.
It's inevitable. It's just in the structure of the business.
So, when is Corporate coming out?
Corporate Season 2 comes out January 15th, 10:30 p.m. Comedy Central. And you can watch Season 1 for free right now on the Comedy Central app or at cc.com.
Now, I want to know, because I'm fascinated to see a show go from day 1 to Season 2. Like, what was the beginnings of Corporate? Because you're a very, very funny stand-up comic.
Thank you.
You know, you're a foot soldier, like, and I mean that as a compliment.
Yeah,
like, you've been in the trenches.
Well, I think that's how you have to do it. So just sort of to give a little bit of, I assume that you want the whole narrative. I'll try to make it fast.
Oh no, don't make it fast.
Okay.
Because I love that's part of the love I have of talking about Roast Battle is I was in the room from day 1. Mm. So that part was very neat.
Well, that's the joy of it, is sort of looking back and being like, wow, look at what I did. That's crazy that happened. Because it's kind of like, I feel like coming to LA, because I'm from New York, or even if you grow up in LA, it's sort of like, there's like a an allegory or metaphor to the gold rush of the 1840s, where it's like you come here and you're like, I want to get my gold, you know?
Sure.
I have this bag full of jokes, and I'd like to make some money out of it. And basically, I started doing stand-up close to 10 years ago, or 9.5 years ago. And I decided, at first I started sort of in the coffee shop world, because I literally didn't know. I wasn't necessarily a huge comedy nerd growing up at all. I sort of like movies a lot, and I liked certain TV shows, but I kind of come more of it from came out here wanting to create. I just wanted to make movies and TV shows. I didn't think I necessarily could, but I was like, well, that's what I like, so I'll try to do it. I wasn't necessarily a huge comedy fan. I think a lot of, like, I'm not a comedy nerd. I haven't watched The Simpsons, really. Like, I don't know a lot about the history of comedy, necessarily, or even the history of stand-up. I'm pretty, like, I had to learn retroactively, like, oh, Richard Pryor's the best. I honestly didn't know. Like, I really didn't. Which I think actually helped me in some ways after a while. But basically, I had some friends who were doing stand-up, including Guy Branum. I was just friends with him.
The best.
Unbelievable comedian. Obviously one of the best. Had some other friends who stopped doing it, but were doing it. Just random people I knew through different friends out here. And so I started doing comedy because I wasn't writing enough. And I did it to just start writing scripts, basically. I didn't understand joke structure that well, but I started doing it because I was, like, pretty depressed. I started doing coffee shops. I literally thought you had to be amazing to be at a club. I didn't know. I had no clue. I thought of the Comedy Store, Laugh Factory, and the Improv as these, like, huge beacons on these hills. Like, oh my God, if you're ever the best, if you're ever Ellen, you get to do a set there. I didn't understand it, you know? So I started doing these coffee shops, and did coffee shop bar circuit forever, like, in terms of open mics. And then I found out, I met some people, eventually after a year or two, I started doing a bunch of shows and met people more from the Comedy Store, from the Improv. They're like, you should just come by to these mics too. You can get seen there, you meet different people. And I think that was the best decision I ever made, because I think one of the mistakes that a lot of comics make is they get too entrenched in one world, and then they start to sort of defend that territory. And to me, I always wanted to be good in the alternative rooms, though I don't love that term, alternative rooms, but let's do it. Alternative rooms, and I want to be good in the clubs as well, because if you can do both, then you're really funny. You know?
Oh, sure.
And it's like, I feel like I'm at the Comedy Store, and I'm also in the other rooms, and I notice some people are just fucking funny, obviously. Actually, there's a lot of people who are just really funny, but there's something missing sometimes. And I see anger come out when, like, an alt person does a club or a club person does an alt room. I see them get really mad. Oh, you don't understand me. It's like, sometimes audiences, it is their fault to some degree, but it's not about that. You have to know how to do both, you know? So I started just sort of jumping between those worlds, doing a ton of stand-up, and in as many, trying to get club spots and trying to get alt spots all the time, and doing all those open mics. In the meantime, I started making sketches with my friends, mostly with my friends Dave Ross, Alan Strickland Williams, and Pat Bishop, but with other people as well. And because to me, the goal is to use comedy. I was like, I love stand-up, but I never thought that I could be a touring stand-up. It just wasn't in my head at that point. It seemed still impossible to be that good. It just seemed like an impossibility. So I was like, well, if I can do stand-up, I will then eventually be able to get a chance to write.
Right.
So I started making sketches, and just basically every weekend making sketches, and 5 to 7 nights a week doing multiple spots for years. And then eventually I went to Montreal for the New Faces thing, which is stupid, but it gives you sort of that pat on the back, being like, you're doing something right. They're saying that you're good enough to not be terrible. You know what I mean? It helps, I think, mostly emotionally. Some people go to Montreal and then they get in the Daily Show. That's the exception. The main people just go back, they paid to go to Montreal, they're in debt, and they're like, what do I even fucking do now? But to me, what it gave me was the confidence to kind of be like, you're good, and you should try to do this stuff.
Right.
So I've been making a ton of sketches and just still doing tons of stand-up. And I had the thought, like, what do I really want to do? It's like, well, I really want to make a TV show, and even though I don't know how to do that, it seems pretty obvious now that people that are not as good at stand-up as me have gone on to great success at TV. And that's, I think, the way to be inspired. And this is the message I want to give to everyone. Don't be inspired by the geniuses. Be inspired by the people who aren't that good that made it. Because to me, that's everything. It's like, if someone not as good as you is killing it, don't be mad at them. they're doing something unbelievably right. They're making the most out of their buffalo, their shit buffalo. And that's how I've always looked at it. It's like if people way less funny than you, way less smart than you, and you go through it all the time. You know, you see at the store people who aren't even that good, but they're killing it. It's like, oh, but that's good. I'm inspired. That's my hero.
Oh,
You know
I
what
agree.
mean? Yeah, so I kind of looked at it that way. I was like, well, if there's so many bad TV shows, 95% of comedies aren't funny at all. Why can't I do that? Why can't I be one of the 95%? Maybe I could be one of the 5%, but I'm just trying to have a career here. So I could be one of the 95% if I just try to learn it. It's like learning a new language. So I started pitching shows, partially with my sketch group, but then also not only one of the guys from my sketch group, Pat Bishop, who I make corporate with, I was living with Matt Ingebretson, who's the other guy in corporate. We're the two main people in corporate. He was my roommate. So we started making some sketches together too. He was doing the same thing. He was doing stand-up. He was making sketches. We're all doing that and starting to get better. People liked us, you know, like in the club world, they liked us if they saw us. In the alt world, we're getting in any show we want to and, you know, doing those rounds, making sketches. People watch them. We got managers. It didn't, you know, we're not getting paid for it. We get a little writing gig here and there. We came up with this idea for corporate, which is basically a sketch show set at a corporation. That's how it was conceived, was essentially Portlandia at a corporation. But I have a very dark sensibility, as do you, and so it was kind of like a psychotic show where we wanted, basically one of the sketches that we had in mind, which we haven't done and won't do now because of the never-ending gun violence in the world, was, this is basically the conception of the show, was a guy is putting together like his rifle at his desk because he's so angry at the world. Like this little squirrely guy's like, fuck this corporation, fuck everyone, I'm gonna kill everyone here. He's putting together this rifle, and as he picks it up and is about to shoot a bunch of people in the office, another shooter comes in, another disgruntled, and they see each other and they're like, oh, well, if I'm not special, then it doesn't matter. And then they both go home. So like it was basically supposed to be like a psychotic show at a corporation because the sketches I was making with the sketch group women were crazy and had a lot of murder and had a lot of fucked up shit. And that was what I wanted to bring to TV. I thought this was my angle, like really dark jokes, essentially. Like really dark jokes with a lot of structure. Because that's how I see the world. And so we pitched that show. And, you know, Comedy Central knew about us from New Faces. And they'd been tracking us and we're good at stand-up and whatever. And they'd seen our videos. And they're like, we don't want a sketch show. Sketch shows don't work anymore, really. But if you want, we'll buy a narrative script from you guys. If you guys will act in it, which we had not even tried to do, we just thought of ourselves as writers, and make it a narrative, we'll buy it. And they give you very little money. Very little. I mean, after lawyer, agent fees, and everything, you get like $4,000 each, you know, to like $5,000 each. It's insane. And we split it between 3 people. So that was it. That was the main thing where it's like we worked for 7 years pounding the pavement. I mean, just doing a million open mics, like sometimes doing like 20 spots a week.
Oh, sure.
Like, you know how it is. And just doing so many jokes to nobody. I mean, I was paying to yell at nobody. In the meantime, making sketches, just hoping I would get a deal to get a chance to show that I could write. And I got the chance. And meanwhile, I pitched other shows and failed at it. You know what I mean? That's the other thing you don't see. If anyone is listening and wanting to know, like, I've pitched like 7 shows. You know what I mean? I've sold 2 things. And then one of them went, which is the magic thing. But I've tried for years to make things. So
how do you get through the rejection? Like,
I get through the rejection by having multiple projects all the time. Because to me, it's like, if you're putting all your eggs in one basket, that might work out for you, and maybe that's your path. But to me, I feel like in order to really make it as a comedian or however you see comedian, like, to me, making a TV show is being a comedian. It's another thing. It's also being a filmmaker. But to me, I'm a comedian. I'm putting my comedic thoughts on air. I just have so many ideas going at once. It's like stand-up, then sketches, then movie ideas, then a bunch of different TV show ideas, and just podcasts. And I've had 2 podcasts. I've had 100 sketches. I've done stand-up 5 million times. Like, I have movies that I'm trying to make, TV show ideas I have. Just constantly working and hoping that something goes. It's spinning plates. At least that's how I see it. And so if something's rejected, I already have several other things I'm working on. And I feel like I am such a clinically depressed person that if I don't have stuff to focus on and I don't and I don't have work to focus on, I'm gonna want to kill myself. Like, I just like think about like, okay, well then kill yourself. Like, to me, I don't want kids. I don't want anything except kind of to be creative. I want to have fun and be creative. Like, that's my goal in life as of now. That if I don't have constant things to consider, then I won't be happy. Like, if I put all my eggs in one basket, I would die. If that makes sense. You know what I mean?
It does.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done comedy so long, I don't even know how long I've been doing it. Like, I literally have forgotten when I started. And I've probably known 10 comics who killed themselves.
Exactly. And we're really fucked up people. And to me, it's about, like, it's why people exercise. They don't exercise to look good. They exercise so they won't kill themselves. You know what I mean? So you can get that, like, serotonin.
Oh, that's what I do.
Yeah. And so, to me, that's what creativity is and work is. And, like, one of the reasons people are workaholics, and I feel like I'm essentially one, is because it keeps the demons at bay. So rejection is, to me, I kind of almost expect to be rejected. But it's like, but I got another thing. It's like being a fighter. It's like, I'm not going to be knocked out. I just want to keep going and get something going, because to me, if I'm working and creating, I'm not thinking about how I'm a fucking loser and a fat piece of shit. You know what I mean? Like, that's just how it goes. So we got this deal, and we started writing, and I also was coming out of a spine surgery at that point. I had spinal fusion surgery, which was just out of nowhere. I had a herniated disc, and it was a nightmare, and I couldn't sleep for many months. So while we were writing, while the deal was figured out, I was getting surgery and recovering, and we started writing while I was back on the couch, just like on opioids. They were at the table, and I was like, I don't like that joke. I like this joke. You know, that kind of thing. We wrote it. Took probably like 4 or 5 months through the 3 or 4 different passes, and then the miracle of all miracles was, they're like, okay, we're gonna shoot it. Like, this is a really good script. So the way we decided to go about it was, I don't like how most narratives in comedy are shot, because they're shot like they don't care that it's a film. Like, it's like they're shot like this open lighting. It's just all about improv. And to me, I always like satire, like Network or Dr. Strangelove, which are really funny movies that are kind of funny and kind of not funny, where it's like they're amazing jokes, but it's very serious what's being talked about, and kind of vicious. I just like vicious comedy that's like really pointed and crazy, but looks good. I like movies. I like David Fincher movies. I want shit to look like really fucking good, but then say jokes about dicks. Like, that's what I like. You know what I mean? I like the movie Airplane.
Oh,
is the funniest movie ever, but the reason why it's funny is it's shot like a drama. No one ever thinks about that. It's a drama, but they're saying the silliest shit ever. So your brain is constantly like, whoa, the plane might crash, or like, you know, like they're all gonna die, but then they're just doing, because it looks great, and it's that Leslie Nielsen is a dramatic actor, and then they have him say like poopy. You know what I mean? Like, that's what comedy is to me, is like really intense stakes and then deflating the balloon over and over again.
Or Peter Graves basically being a pedophile.
Yeah, it's insane. You get away with it because it's shot like a drama. You know what I mean?
Like, that's just crazy to me,
so
that
crazy.
Like, he's a serious, like, legit actor, and I just would love to have been in the room where he was pitched, hey, you're kind of playing a pedophile, but it's funny.
It's so funny. Yeah, and I think that when you shoot stuff like a drama, you can get away with almost anything.
Right.
Because it's like, no, we really... Pat Bishop, the director of the show, of Corporate, said basically, that's kind of the joke, is that you did all of this work. You put people in these incredible suits. You've spent so much money and time to light it correctly, and then you have him make a joke about his dick. Like, that's the joke, essentially, is you did all this work just to have a pedophile joke, or that kind of shit. And that, to me, is like the essence of comedic filmmaking. So we shot the pilot, and we really made some strong choices. We hired this French DP who like has shot like world-class commercials and like doesn't shoot comedy. And I'd recommend that to everyone if you ever make something. Like, don't just do what everyone else is doing. Like, try to really think about like, how can I make this different? Hire people who think differently, who've made things that look differently. We made the pilot. It was really good. We worked our asses off on it, and then miraculously we got the first season, and then it was like, oh my God, I'm making I've never really been on TV before. You know, I've never, those showcases, you know, for comedy, like Adam Devine's House Party, they never let me do that, even though I felt like I was good enough. But now it's like, I've gone from 0 to having my own show out of fucking nowhere. It was insane. So we made a season of TV. I never slept. I was so anxious. We shot it like 10 years before. I was number one on the call sheet. I was a PA on a Comedy Central pilot. Like I remember, I was a PA on a Comedy Central pilot, and now 10 years later, I'm in the fucking show.
You're number one.
And it's like, what life is just, and thinking of the times I'd wanted to die, it's like, oh, I'm so glad I stayed alive just to know that this could happen, you know? So we made season 1, and then they really liked season 1, and basically before it even aired, they're like, we're probably going to want to do another season because we really like this, and it's different, and it's shot well, and it's cool and crazy, and, you know, Comedy Central has such a weird thing now where no one's watching their shit, really, because no, it's true. I mean, like, this isn't like, I'm not even trashing them, like,
oh no,
yeah,
I mean,
it's no one watches it because no one has cable.
Well, yeah, it's like you know, the Showtime show I was on. Like, I don't think a lot of people saw it because I would tell people, "Hey, it's on Showtime," and they're like, "Fuck, I don't have that."
Yeah, and they watch shit on their phone. They don't have cable. They have Netflix. They have Hulu. They pay for these like subscription services. Cable is a dying beast to a certain degree, and so I'm on cable and I have a show, and I think it's really good and it's reviewed really well, and no one has seen it. No one's like my friends haven't seen it because none of my friends can afford cable. So it's like this really funny sort of place to be in where Comedy Central likes the show and they want it to keep going, but the ratings don't really justify what we're doing. Right. So it's confusing where it's like they have to have something on, but no one's really watching it, even though it is good and people do like it who see it. So it's a confusing time.
There's just so much content out right now. So you know, Netflix, Comedy Central, or I guess the two big boys. But then you've got stuff on YouTube now, Hulu, Amazon. I mean, I see comedy specials on the weirdest channels.
Yeah.
Logo.
Really good comedians too are like doing specials on like epics.
Yeah.
And you're like, what is epics?
You know, Showtime had a bunch, and it's just like you don't know. It's overwhelming.
It's so overwhelming, and it's also just weird what hits, because sometimes really good stuff hits, you know? Sometimes it's like, yeah, that person, like John Mulaney has like specials that killed on Netflix because he's such an incredible comedian. But then sort of like random people get picked up on like there's so many Netflix specials, but then it's like, oh, Nanette now is what we're talking about. Or like there's just, or Ali Wong got huge and she's so funny, but it's like, that easily could have not gotten huge, you know? It's just sort of like, there's super funny people on Netflix not getting huge, and there's super funny shows on Comedy Central, or like just random networks. Like Netflix, American Vandal was a huge hit first year. The second season just probably was really good, but just kind of went away because of the algorithm. It's a really weird time where everyone wants so much content, but is anyone watching it?
I mean, that was the problem with I'm Dying up here. You know, I mean, you look at that. I mean, Melissa Leo was an Oscar winner.
Yeah, she's incredible.
It's like, wow, how is this not... Like Ray Donovan kills, and then I'm Dying Up Here just never took off.
It's really weird. It's bizarre because the media, it really is who the media wants to make stars for the most part. Sometimes things go viral on YouTube, and like Russell Peters essentially is famous because his stuff went big on the internet, you know, and it spread.
Oh my god!
But it's like, but also it easily couldn't have. You know what I mean? Like he was doing stuff forever, so. It's a weird time to have your own TV show and like feel like, whoa, I fucking did it. But to be like, I don't know if I'm going to have a job in 2 months, and I don't know if anyone even saw this thing. It's a weird thing.
Well, like, how much leeway do you get with Comedy Central? Because I know, like, you know, in the early days of Roast Battle, it was a wacky show. I mean, we had a rule where two white comics were battling, they could drop a hard N-word. Mm-hmm. And, you know, Comedy Central kind of came in and... probably rightfully so. You can't really have that rule anymore. I mean, have they given you kind of like, not free reign, but have they not tied your hands too much?
You know what's interesting is they've been pretty good to us. I think rarely do we want to do something that they don't really like. And if there is something that we want to do that they don't like, it's not necessarily because of fears for the most part. I will tell you about one thing in a second that was a little weird, but it's mostly just about, is this funny? Like, do they, like, because I think we're just kind of weird and experimental people. Like, we like to make jokes, tons of jokes. Like, our shows have tons of jokes and constant jokes, but we're also just weirdos. We just like to make weird shit. Our show's a little weird. And I think that's why it's good, but I don't know, like, a lot of Comedy Central shows are just, like, about farts. You know what I mean? Like, they're not necessarily, like, going for... We're trying to, like, talk about how corporations are evil. So it's a little... I think sometimes they're like, will this make sense to an audience? For the most part, they let us go nuts. I think if you prove yourselves to be competent and not fuck-offs and, like, get shit done on time, because we ran the show the second year... They're like, if you get your work done, we're not going to bother you. So I have to say they've been pretty fair in terms of they let us do what we want because we show our work, we show how hard we're working, we have answers when they have questions. So quite rarely, like, they wanted to sort of have a love interest for season 2, and I was like, nah, fuck that. Like, I don't care about love interests. Like, that's not what I want to talk about. Every show talks about that. So we can just say no if we don't like it, and we can explain why. They're pretty fair. Like, creative control, they're fair.
And how fun is it? Because I've noticed while looking over the cast, it's a lot of your friends.
I mean, that's the best part of it. That's the best thing ever, man. It's like, I don't think there's a much bigger joy. I mean, it's obviously a joy when you get to make your own shit, but to, like, give people jobs, like, even to pay them, like, fucking $800 for a day of work, like, and to know that they're going to be appreciated and seen, is a joy. Like, casting your friend is a fucking joy. Thank God I'm not a sociopath. Because I wouldn't be able to enjoy giving my friend work. Because
right.
I think that's what a lot of up-and-coming comedians don't understand is that one of the reasons you should always do well and try hard is that people are watching. And some of the people you're working with will make it. And if they think you're funny, they might be the one that gives you a fucking recurring role on their TV show that then someone else could see and then get you a full-time gig. It's like you're constantly auditioning for other people without even realizing it. The reason I did all those fucking open mics and shit shows, we've been on so many shit shows together, Hollywood Hotel, like so many horror shows, because people are gonna see that and one day be like, oh man, you know who's really funny? That guy.
Right.
It works, man. That's like look at the store now. You know, like people are coming up and like starting to do really well, and like people that were like desperate for years living in studios, they're starting to finally be noticed. And if you have performed with them for years, all it takes is them once they get their thing, them telling a network executive, you know who else is funny? Earl.
Right.
That's really what it is. It's a system built in nepotism that's fairly libertarian that kind of is fair if you wait long enough. Not all the time, but I think it can often be pretty fair.
Well, I always tell people, younger comics, be nice to everyone. Mm-hmm. I mean, you should be that way anyway, because like my mom said, we all shit out of the same hole.
Exactly.
But
our mouths.
Yeah. Well, it depends what you're into. But like the Comedy Store tonight, some of those open micers who couldn't get on a potluck tonight will be the next Jake Weisman.
100%. And it's like, the other thing too is like, I don't really think I'm the funniest. There are people younger than me that like are funnier than me. And like, you gotta be smart enough to recognize that. Like, don't be so insecure that you're not willing to see who's better than you. Like, there's like younger people all the time. Younger people are just you after you went through what they went through.
Sure.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, they're just people who are younger, who maybe not as wise, but they could be smarter. They could be funnier. And like, I like when people are super funny. I want to work with them. I want to help them. I want to use them. I feel like it's fun. There's so many fucking talented people that we know. There's so many untalented people, but there's so many fucking talented people. And the other cool thing about comedy, which sometimes sucks, is you can hit it at 50. You really can.
Hope.
You can.
Well, it is the one business where you can make it when you're a little older.
Yeah.
I think if you're funny, you're funny. And,
100%.
There's going to be a need for the next Kramer, minus the racism.
Yeah.
Or the next Office, where some of the actors in that were older.
Absolutely.
Or in corporate, like you need old.
We have a lot of older people.
Lance Reddick.
He's 60. He's close to 60 now.
I mean, I love him from The Wire.
Oh, he's just.
And like, is it weird? Who do you think it's weirder for? You guys to work with like a legit actor like him, or him, like working with a bunch of comics? I mean, comedy's probably not his foray necessarily.
You know what's interesting? I think it's weirder for him because what's funny about him is like, So Lance Reddick, obviously one of the best actors, so incredible. From The Wire, from Fringe, from Lost. He's just like amazing.
It's Lance Reddick.
And he always plays, he's fucking unreal. He's a Terminator, basically. And you meet him and he's this soft, gentle man. Like he's the opposite of what he acts like. And that's sort of I'll rarely say this, but that was our genius move. Because we could see kind of how funny he could be. Because it's like, he is the most intense actor I've ever seen, basically. And if you give intense actors funny shit to say, that's the best life can really be. Because it's like, he says things as if they are the most grave circumstances all the time. He could be reading a phone book and you're like, oh my God. But that's why we just have been such fans of him for so long. And he never gets put in comedy because I think there's a lack of imagination from a lot of casting directors or executives who don't want to see people who do one thing do another thing. When sometimes that is the best thing ever. Like, I remember seeing Albert Brooks in Drive.
Right.
Albert Brooks is one of the funniest, most neurotic Jews ever, and he plays a fucking mad psycho sociopath in Drive, and it's so wonderful because you're expecting something else, and it's this incredible experience. Lance apparently did a lot of comedy in college. Or in acting school. He went to Yale Drama School, did a lot of comedy there. But he said he kind of got typecast right away, especially after The Wire. He's so good at being intense that people were like, well, he'll be amazing if we get him. Let's just use him for this part. And for like 15 or 20 years, he's only done that. He's been wanting to do comedy forever. And I think it's weird for him because he doesn't necessarily... He's such a good actor that he doesn't really understand that what he's doing is incredible in comedy. He's a little more insecure at that than he would be at drama. He knows he's good, but he has to really trust our writing. Because I think he's like, is this funny, what I'm doing? It's like, it's so funny. But you don't necessarily understand how funny it is because you haven't done it for so long, and you don't necessarily know how funny you're being because you really haven't been in a comedy almost your entire career. Except for, like, he was in a Key and Peele sketch. But he doesn't understand, like, what he's doing is so brilliant. So it's weirder for him because he has to trust 3 young white guys to, like trust us. What you're doing is remarkable, but you don't necessarily even get how good it is.
Right.
And for us, we're just, like, kind of pigs in shit where we're like, holy shit, we get to work with Lance Reddick.
Yeah, I mean, well, it goes back to Airplane, where that movie worked. I think if you had comic actors in Airplane, it probably, I mean, the Zuckers are, like, brilliant, and the Abrams, but, like, having Lloyd Bridges, all these serious, like, people from disaster movies.
Way funnier.
And, like, even RoboCop to a degree where you had, like...
Oh, the best.
Kurtwood Smith has a bad guy where he had only played good guys. And Ronnie Cox was amazing as the evil boss.
Casting is so much of what you do. It's so much of directing, essentially. It's just casting the right person and having that vision and trusting... Like, essentially what you should be trying to do is getting Juilliard-trained actors to talk about nonsense. Right. That's really my advice. And I think that if you're a good enough writer, you should trust that your words will really work if you get the best actors ever to say dumb shit. Like, you should really trust that. And that, for some reason, there's something so funny about taking things so seriously and playing it so straight and not improvising. Just, like, be serious and trust the words to be incredibly funny.
Well, because in a corporate world, there's so many characters. Mm-hmm. There's the receptionist, there's the mean boss, or all the people in the cubicles. Like, there's so many ripe opportunities to get someone like an Eddie Pepitone in there. So many great comic minds. What's the writing process like? Do you guys all map out ideas and then go in the bunker and say this is what we each want, and then?
Yeah, so we hire like 3 to 4 writers for the season.
Comics?
Sometimes, but mostly, that's the funny thing about stand-up comedians is, like, there's so many funny stand-up comedians, but there's also a whole world of people who don't feel the need to perform, who are absolutely as brilliant, and they're just writers. And they're so, and the thing that's so amazing about them is they understand story. A lot of problems with stand-up comedians and why, like, Comedy Central buys a ton of scripts from people each year, and they can be super funny, but they don't understand story. They just understand jokes so well. They're super funny people. They're really charismatic. but they don't necessarily understand how a story works. They have just done jokes for so long, and they never studied like a screenplay essentially, or how to write one. Let's see, we've never really hired comics. We hired second season Langan Kingsley. She does like sketch and stuff. So it's more people from like a sketch background, or just writers, or just straight up writers that we've hired to write for the show. We've definitely hired stand-up comedians to be on the show. But yeah, we mostly hired writers, and because we were like, we're stand-up comics, we understand that. We want the show, I think, is very written. It's like a very well written show, and I think we want people who think like that. Essentially, almost funny playwrights. Like that's kind of what we want each episode to be, is a funny play, a funny cinematic play. And so we hired them. Matt, Pat, and I usually go do mushrooms a few times in Big Bear, a few times when we come up with these fucking ideas. And it's like, okay, what do we want to talk about? What's going on in our lives, you know? And then we write it down in this big Google Doc. We come with a bunch of ideas, potential episode areas. We get these people to come into a room. We have like about 12 to 15 weeks. And then we throw these ideas at them and see if they like them. Because you kind of have to, it's basically what other writers are for, is to kind of be like, you want to try to make the kind of show that you'd want to watch and that they'd want to watch. These are smart people with great taste, and it's like, what about this idea? And they're like, nah, that's fucking dumb, and some other TV show did it. Like, you know, you're like, oh no, that was my one fucking idea that I came with. You hash ideas out, and then basically you all decide on, okay, this episode idea is pretty cool, and then by scene, you come up with what each character is doing. What are their motivations for the scene, and then you just meld it all together. Essentially, most episodes are two great ideas that somehow work together.
Right.
And that's hard to find. You know what I mean? It's not easy to do that. Like it's way harder than you might think. And for it to seem seamless and like it all belongs together. It's like, okay, what do I want to talk about? I want to, like, there's an episode we have called Trademark where I want to talk about how Banksy is full of shit. And then I want to talk about how corporations run the game no matter what. So basically we came up with an idea. It's like, okay, Banksy, because I just don't like Banksy. I think he's fucking annoying. And I hate how people think he's like so cool. And it's like, okay, so basically the corporation is going to hire a Banksy-esque artist to make anti-corporate stuff that protesters will like. So essentially the corporation makes money off of the protesters by pretending they're anti-corporate, you know, and no one knows that the corporation is hiring Banksy to make this stuff. So then it's like, okay, so that was like based on the idea of like how protesters are kind of full of shit no matter what, and Banksy's full of shit. How does that work? And then eventually you think of the motivations for each character, and then you just struggle to put together a scene order and then write the script, and it's very painful.
And how long does each episode typically take to shoot?
We have about 4.5 shooting days, but you know, shooting is like this compacted 8 or 9 week process. So we're cross-boarding, so we're on something, because we don't have a lot of money for our show. Our show looks like it costs like $2 to $3 million an episode. We only have at most $1 million, which is really not a lot of money for what we're trying to do based on union rules. So we have some days I'm shooting 8 episodes in the same day, like a scene from 8 different episodes in the season. So I'm constantly changing costumes and all that stuff, and it's madness. But that's the only way we get to shoot this show. It's just crazy. Like, they'll leave us alone if we stay under budget, but it's absolutely insane. We should have like 2 or 3 more weeks to shoot it, but we don't. So yeah, like basically you have to almost memorize all 10 scripts, but you do that because you're writing it, you're pouring over you're rewriting, and you're just, yeah, it's like rarely do we shoot the same episode 2 days in a row. You know what I mean? Sometimes because of the locations you have to, but you're just like constantly shooting scene after scene after scene after scene, and like going home and trying to like remember your lines for the next day and trying to get enough sleep, and then waking up at 5 a.m. going. It's an insane process.
How much is there any improv at all? Like,
there is. I think the way that I look at improv is this: is like you should have the funny down on paper, so where it's like definitely funny. Your job as a writer is to have the writing down. Don't leave it to the day. Have it down so it's definitely funny, it's clear, it's hilarious, and that is way harder than most people think. And when you get there, shoot that, and then if that's good, give your actors a chance to do stuff. Talk to them. Like, there's certain actors, we do have comedians on the show, like Adam Lustig, who plays John on the show. Genius comedic actor. So it's like, he's always going to add something. But it's like, but as long as you get the thing, so I can have that in the editing room, then we do a take or two where it's like, okay, now do whatever you want. And then react however you want and see what happens. And often that gets into the show. But I don't think you should be relying on improv, or at least that's not our talent. We do improv, and we can do that, but it's much more important if you're making a satire, which I think our show is, to have the words on paper, and then if something better happens, wonderful. But your job is to get the thing you wrote. And then if you have extra time, great, go nuts. See what happens.
Now, do you ever take anything from current events, like Trump acting like a maniac, or like the R. Kelly documentary? Like, I was obsessed with that this weekend. Do you ever go, oh, something like that might be funny in an episode?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, the way I look at it is, I don't want to if you're making a narrative show, like, jokes are different. Like, you're making a narrative show, you want it to be able to stand 20 years from now and still be funny. And I think a lot of the mistakes that are made in a lot of comedies, why they're not funny, is you watch something 2 years later, you're like, oh, that referenced something that was happening then that I don't care about.
Right.
Our show is written in a year before it gets on air. So you can't just write about Trump. Right. And so what we chose to do is our show would have been the same whether Trump or Hillary was president. And I feel like, to me, we still live in an oligarchy and it's still fucking insane. So it's sort of like, I don't really care who's president. There are these things that are happening in America that I want to talk about.
Right.
Not, like, Trump is a fucking psycho, but like, every president is a psycho.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And so I don't want to be too topical because I don't think that that's going to hit as many people. And the news is so rapid now and things are so turbulent and seemingly changing every day that, like, to talk about one thing is kind of, I think, short-sighted, especially because of how we write and how we shoot. So I think, to me, this year we have a lot of stuff about the media. So, like, Hampton DeVille, which is the corporation of the show, buys out a media company, kind of like CNN, for the purpose of changing the news to make people feel fear so they'll buy more shit.
Right.
So that to me is just about how media is fake now, which is, and every media company has their own spin. No one cares about the truth because now they just need to create panic in their consumers so they'll click on the articles more. So to me, it's like, that's just a thing that's happening now. So we can talk about that. That's what's happening in America. But even 20 years from now, I think that'll probably still be happening and they can see the show and be like, oh, this is a funny satire of what goes on. And so I think, to me, like, my favorite movies like Network, Doctor Strangelove, the things still ring true. Like, it's like the satire, even though it was kind of specific to that time, it's still, when you watch it, you're like, that could still happen. That's kind of what's really happening. And my goal, as someone who wants to make satires for a living, is to create such a truth, or a farcical truth, that it will last forever. That's the goal.
I mean, Network was so far ahead of its time.
It is what is happening.
76, I think it was.
To me, that's the thing we're trying to make, is we're trying to, like, make, like, a current network that's a little sillier. But to me, you watch Network now, you're like, this is literally what's happening.
MSNBC against Fox.
100%.
Like...
Or like the Symbionese Liberation Army, like the one there's like a meeting there where the network is meeting with the group of people, the rebels that essentially kidnapped Patty Hearst.
Right.
And they're talking about, like, well, my deal should include that these are people supposedly altruistic, and they, like, hate America, and they're just trying to get a better deal as well. And I feel like that's everything that's going on now. If you're anti-stuff, that's just a brand. If you're a comedian who's, like, really anti-Trump, that's just your brand. And you need things to be bad in order for you to succeed.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, if Trump was, like, a great guy, how unfun would that be?
100%. And I think that's, like, we live in a capitalist state, so it's sort of like that's what's eventually going to happen is, like, we have an episode this year about makeup. And, like, my character tries to make male makeup a thing. Because to me, makeup is a thing because we've taught women that they should feel bad. So they feel bad, so they buy billions of dollars of makeup. If they stopped wearing makeup, the economy would collapse.
Oh, sure.
And so, like, there's this whole form of, like, men need to be more openly insecure in order to sell them makeup to think they should look better because that's a potential billion-dollar industry. And so like the whole society is now built on, or like even depression medication or self-help, it's all built on this shit that people feel bad. And if they started feeling good, we'd be fucked.
Oh yeah, I've
so
read
funny
tons
to
of
me.
those books.
It's so funny to me.
Tony Robbins.
Yeah, yeah, and it's just built on, oh, there's something wrong with me. I can be better. And it's like, you can't really. You just are who you are.
I mean, I went to his seminar.
Yeah?
I mean, I'll give him this. I was amazed at his energy level.
Sure.
I mean, for 12 hours, he did not stop talking.
Yeah, he is a beast.
And you think, well, this guy's got to be on tons of coke.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe he is. I don't know. But I was impressed more by that than what he was actually saying.
Of course, and that's the thing. It's like, but also his industry is based on people dumber than you. You know, more lost than you. No, I'm saying like you're a smart person who is cynical enough to see bullshit, right? That's what you see. You're always like constantly being like, you're all full of shit, right? So imagine someone who's not really seeing things that way, and is like, oh, here's a very tall Cro-Magnon looking man telling me what to do. Thank God, and that's why he has a career. If everyone wasn't weak, then he would be fucked.
Oh yeah.
He wants people to be weak.
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess it's weird. Like his products are gonna make you less weak, which in the end hurts him.
I know, but also he's good at just constantly finding new reasons why you don't feel good about yourself. It's funny because like theoretically he wants everyone to feel better, and it's like, do you really?
Well, it's like hockey fighters. You know, if you don't do it, there's 20 guys who will. Exactly. So, you know, it's a weird area of like, you care about these guys, but there's, you know, you don't want them to get better. Exactly. You want to give them just a tasty of positivity. Yeah. But buy the next book. I know. To complete.
It's a very weird, like, how you make a living in this fucking country, or maybe everywhere, it's just like bizarre. Like, just the shit you have to do, the shit you have to manipulate, the people sometimes you have to hurt. It's like, it's so fucked up.
Oh, you gotta be, in LA stand-up, you gotta be an animal.
Oh, I mean, some of the most famous comedians, even if they're good, they're like, some are great people, but some are really bad people. And it's just like, well, but I also, even if I don't like that, it's like, I see why you're doing that, though, because it works for you.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we probably know the same people, you know. I won't mention names, but it's like, wow, how do you act like that? But I guess you're more famous than I am, so I get it.
Yeah, if you could, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, if you could shut off the empathy part of your brain, it's possible you'd be a way richer person.
Oh, I'd be much more famous.
Yeah.
Like, there's just things I'm not willing to do, and I'm like, just speaking for me personally, like, I'm not a great networker or schmoozer. Yeah. It's just not in my nature to be phony.
I know, and that's the issue. And it's funny too, because it's like what makes you theoretically a better person hurts you. And so I get why some people either are able to not do that, but I just don't really have that. I don't have much tolerance for bullshit, and I kind of wish I did. I just don't have it.
But you keep it real, which is why I've always liked you. Like,
I mean,
you know, you're a straight shooter. There's no like, what does Jake think about me? You know.
Yeah, well, it's just sort of like, I just don't. To me, it's like, I want to give everyone a chance, and I want to believe the best in people. I want to give everyone the sort of like, I want to be like, yeah, hey, what's up? Like, if someone's fine, like, you're great. Like, I don't. But if someone is at all a piece of shit, it's sort of like, I would rather die than pretend you're a good person. I just can't, I don't have it in me. It's just like, I think it's because I just was raised Jewish, and I like to not fucking trust anyone, and just sort of like be like, my whole life and growing up, everyone's just constantly complaining about what's wrong. And so if someone's not treating me well, it's like, I'm like, fuck you. Like don't, like, fuck you, you're causing me pain, I don't like you. I just can't, I don't know, I can't fucking deal with it.
Well, I wish more people in our business would be like that. Just be straight up, you know. You know, I'm probably too straight up for my own good.
Right.
So I'm trying to find that happy medium of...
It's tough because I totally agree with you, and that's why I think we do relate, is like, it is almost physically impossible for us to not be honest. But what I'm trying to learn, the medium I'm trying to get to, is like, sometimes I don't have to be honest if something or someone is not directly hurting me. Like, if I see someone full of shit, like, what I'm trying to do is like, unless they're coming after me or really hurting me, I'm trying to just like not say anything. And it's not easy for me. It's not easy for me because I feel like part of my job is to be like, you're fucking full of shit. Fuck you. You're hurting people by lying. You know what I mean? Fuck you. You don't even understand what you're doing. But I understand sometimes that brings more trouble than it's worth. And it's like, I'm not that it's not being a fucking pussy or something. It's just like, I'm sensitive. So I don't necessarily want to bring on the struggle that will happen if I call someone out that I don't like.
I mean, it's tough. You know, I drew inspiration from a Tom Selleck prison movie when his first day in the yard, the black gang steals his toothpaste.
Which movie is this?
It's so bad it's good. It's called An Innocent Man.
Okay.
And I think this was his shot at, like, he had a few movies that maybe didn't do well, and this was his last, like, hey, can you carry a movie? And so the black gang steals his toothpaste and, you know, his soap, and the next day the Aryan Brotherhood, the leader's like, hey, you gotta kill that guy. And he's like, I'm not gonna kill someone over stealing toothpaste. He's like, you don't have to stand tall in here, but you've got to stand. And that's how I feel, like, as gay as that sounds, like, at some point you gotta stand up for yourself in this business.
Yeah, I just think that, like, you know, my instinct is that people are trying to hurt me. So I think sometimes, for me, it's like, I feel like I always stand tall, and then it's like, oh, that person wasn't trying to hurt. I didn't necessarily need to, like, fight them.
Right.
But my instinct was I did. And I think that, like, I completely agree. You gotta have a backbone, because you gotta live with yourself. And if you don't like who you are, like, and you feel like you didn't stick up for yourself, it's just sort of like, you're gonna bury that pain somewhere, and it's not gonna be healthy. So I always try to be like, no, don't treat me that way, or don't. But then a lot of times they're like, oh, I was just, I didn't mean to hurt you at all. You know what I mean? Right. So I feel like I've overreacted sometimes. So I'm trying to be less reactive to things, have a backbone, not take any shit, but be less reactive and give some time to think, like, okay, what actually happened there? Do I need to say something?
Right.
For the good of me, for the good of mankind, whatever. But it's hard because I feel like people want to, and I feel like even having a TV show, it's like, I feel like people want to take me down. That might be completely incorrect, and I don't necessarily focus, like, I don't necessarily see that, but my instinct is that, so I'm always, like, on guard, like, who thinks I don't deserve it? Who think, whatever, you know? So I'm always trying to, like, but it's tough. It's tough to be real and to not kind of get into scrapes a lot. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, I do think that, you know, you've put yourself in a position where people have to be nice to you, like, which is great. I mean, Rob Schneider gave me the best advice. It's so simple, but you've done essentially what he told me. Become so good that they can't deny you.
You have to be undeniable. Yeah.
And it's like, no, you think, well, Earl, that's pretty basic advice. But when someone successful tells it to you, at least I tend to go, oh, yeah.
Well, I noticed it, like, because I love the store so much, but I came in later. I feel like I had much less of an incubation period than some paid regulars. And I know for a fact, because people have told me, they're like, yeah, they gave you a little, like, people were, like, giving Adam shit for, like, allowing me through, and I totally get it. But then I think some people, like, it hurt, like, oh, fuck that guy, like, he hasn't spent a decade here, whatever it was, you know? But then they saw me, and they're like, okay, he's good. Like I want to, like, people came to see me, and at the store, there's a brotherhood, or there's a fraternity that is pretty strong, but there's also a lot of petty bullshit in any comedy circle. Of course, I mean, people do support each other, but people also want to take each other down, and I know for a fact people came to see me to see that I sucked, and they were like, oh, he doesn't, though. Like, I like his comedy, so that essentially is being undeniable. It's like, oh, I want to hate you, but I don't. And you're nice to me, too.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like, but I felt that energy of, like, having to prove myself, which you should. You should have to fight through that energy. But I know that that's how people felt, and I totally even empathize with that, you know? But it's tough. You have to be really fucking good to be good.
Well, I think at the store specifically, you have a few people out there who are store-only people. Like, they don't go to the Improv or Laugh Factory or the Ice House or Hermosa. And so when they see, I guess, a store outsider get past, it's like, why them and not me?
Yeah, they feel insecure to a certain degree.
Well, it's because Jake's been fucking hoofing it for 10 years.
Right.
At bar shows, alt rooms, from the Valley to Long Beach to
Wore
wherever.
out several cars. Yeah.
Where you've been just kind of hanging out,
sucking up to the paid regulars.
Yeah, hoping Adam will see you in the back smoking pot and go, oh yeah, I gotta pass this guy or girl.
Yeah, and it's funny because I just think there's a lot of insecurity there, and I think that's why I try not to be like, if someone's funnier than me, I'm happy to fucking see it. You know what I mean? It's like cool, like great, you're funny, like wow, great job. Like I don't. It's like I'm as funny as I am. I can't control being better than I am. I was given whatever I was given at birth, And so I just try to be really good at what I do and try to do the work. I don't. If I feel like I'm not advancing comedically, I try to take a step back and work on it. Like I'm not trying to get something I don't deserve, because I don't want to be a great comedian without knowing I'm great. Like right. It doesn't, I feel so fraudulent. I do too much coke. Like I would feel insecure and like feel terrible. Like I only want to be great if I deserve it. If people are like, you're great. Like, and I feel like most people don't understand that. They just want to be famous and they don't even know what it means because they're so, I want to be the most liked boy in the universe. And it's like, no, like you got to work at this for a long fucking time. And if you're good, they'll let you know. And only then will it really be fun because you'll be on stage and you'll be like, no one can fucking touch me. I know what I'm doing. And that's the joy of it. But people don't see that in the first 5 years. They feel like, or even the first 10 years, a lot of times, they just feel like, fuck that guy. He doesn't deserve it.
Well, that's what I love about Adam, is Adam, at the Comedy Store, he doesn't necessarily pass the most famous people. Like, I think me and Candace Thompson were the first two he passed.
Yeah.
There's certainly many more famous than me.
Yeah. I think he's one of the best things that's ever happened.
Oh,
he's amazing.
It will be a sad day when he leaves the store.
He is. The store is just the best place in the universe to do comedy now, and it's because people. It's just the energy's incredible. And I feel like it's all him.
Oh yeah, it's. I think to a degree it was Eric Anderson who I think was one of the first guys to clue into the old talent coordinators' interesting accounting methods. Mm-hmm. So he got the ball rolling, but then Adam was. I don't think you can argue with one person he's passed.
He's so open-minded, and he likes weird people. He likes people who aren't there. He knows when someone's good, and he really cares about developing them. And he's also nice.
Yeah,
he's a fucking nice guy.
It's like
it's pleasant to be around him. Like it's a positive in a place that is known for its dark energy. He brings an incredible amount of positive energy, and that place is bustling.
But it's still, I guess what I like about it to a degree is it still has that dark energy.
Oh, yeah.
Because now everyone's trying to get in there.
It always will be dark.
Well, yeah, it's just there's too many of us who have issues. Even the successful people
100%
are depressed. Even if you're on a TV show, you have to deal with bullshit.
Oh, yeah.
As you know. Or you're trying to get a special on the air, and like you see someone who just bombed in front of you, and they're on a billboard.
They're so famous, yeah, exactly.
But the story's just, I don't know. There's just something magical about it.
It's incredible. What's happening now at the store? There'll be a documentary about it in 30 years or something like that. It's just a very special time. Every fucking night is sold out. It's crazy.
Like Tuesday nights now, the main room's sold out, and 6-7 years ago, you had 8 people in the OR watching Sebastian.
It's an amazing time.
The belly room. It's really, it's like the bar in Star Wars. Mm-hmm. It's like every character in the comedy universe is up there. And
yeah, it's beautiful.
What's next for you now that season 2's in the hole? Do you start working on season 3, or do you do little stand-up to clear your...
Well, it's funny. I used to think that I could multitask really well, which essentially means like making things and also doing stand-up constantly. But I found that, I lose my mind. Like I have finally, I didn't accept this for a long time, but I do accept now you kind of need to live your life a little in order to have shit to talk about. Like that's just me. So I just spent a year and a half on the second season. I'm promoting it now. Because it's coming out and stuff. And I have a little bit of a break before we even hear if we get a season 3. Like, we won't hear for a few months, I think. And then, if so, we would take a few months and then write it and then shoot it. So, that's a whole lot of time. So I'm trying to. I just need a mental break a little bit because I just output so much shit.
Right.
So I'm trying to take a little break from stand-up comedy, think about it a little bit, come back to it in a few months when I'm like ready to like have energy for that, because I don't want to go on stage with old jokes and kill, because that feels false to me.
Right.
It just feels like then it's just an ego stroke, and I don't fucking need that. And my face is on a fucking billboard. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to be a fucking piece of shit. I want to like do comedy right and have shit to say. So I'll take a little break, and then I want to write a movie because I would love to make a movie. I mean, that's if you got a TV show, you should try to make a fucking movie, you know, because that's like the dream. And then in a few months, just get back to writing and doing stand-up. I think I just, you know, you're promoting yourself and talking about yourself all the time. It's not very healthy. And then once that dies down, like, be a human again, and just figure out, what do I want to talk about next? Hopefully it's another season of corporate. But if not, you know, just doing a ton of stand-up and writing a new thing and trying to get shit made. So I don't know. It's funny because I'm technically unemployed right now, but I have a fucking show coming out in a week. So it's like, life is just weird and bizarre, and it'll always be weird.
But you got billboards, bro.
I know, but it's weird though. You know
but
what I mean?
It's the best. Like, I drive by your billboards and I get happy. Like,
that makes me happy to hear that.
It's just so neat to see good people get good things, and like.
Well, I appreciate that.
You know, knowing that you, I don't know if struggle's the right word, but we're at it for a while before we got mainstream.
Yeah.
It's just fucking neat to see good things happen to good people. So.
Yeah, it's funny too, because like, but you know, like, you've been on a show and then you're like, wait, what's next? Like, but I still need a job. Like you need a new job, and you're like, I have a show, but I'm like, I'm truly worried about the next thing, you know?
Well, I think you have to be, because, I mean, at one point I was on 3 shows, but I always in my head, and maybe it's because the way my mom raised me, which she's skewed toward the negative side.
I have a similar parenting style.
The belief system of like, in my mind, it was like, well, shit, they could all be canceled tomorrow.
100%.
And then what? You know, and I see that with some people involved with roast battle, like it's roast battle, like, and then they either don't get it, they don't get on the show, or they don't do well when they did get it, and then it's like, well, now what? Well, you should have thought of that, you know, 2 months before your battle or whatever.
Yeah, that's what I was saying about spinning plates. It's like, I'm always just trying to think, okay, well, I got this thing, so now I'm aware that I can get this thing, and I'm good enough to get this thing. What do I want to do next? And I'm always just trying to think of it as a career and not take any one thing to make it too much of who I am. And it's like, I love stand-up so much, but it's just a part of what I'm doing.
Right.
And I thought when I after a few years, like, this is what I'm going to do. And now it's like, oh, well, it'll just be something maybe sometimes I commit to it solely for a few years, and sometimes I take a break and come back to it. And that has to be okay. You know what I mean? It's a little scary sometimes, but it's like, comedy is a whole world, and there's podcasts, there's so many different ways to express yourself, and you kind of got to do it all now.
I mean, yeah, I hate social media, but I just hate
Me too.
Hey, will you like my picture?
Yeah. I got off Instagram because I was like, what am I doing?
But, you know, you have to, I mean, I guess you don't have to do anything, but like, you know, any meeting I take, the very few that I do take, the first question is, how many followers do you have? You know, but it's like, what's it matter? I'm funny. Like,
I know.
But like, you can't bring someone in. Oh, Earl's or Jake is funny. Oh, okay, great. How many Instagram followers do they have?
I know.
You know, it's just like, I would be off all social media if I didn't have a podcast.
Me too.
Or
I was off Twitter for like 4 months, and I just got back on the last few weeks simply just because I want people to know the show's coming out. But, you know, by March when the show's off air, I'm going to go dormant again for a while, which is maybe a mistake, but I hate people so much.
I love it.
And I, you know, I'm just vicious on there. And so are you. I mean, you're similarly vicious, even more so, and I love it. But I need to, like, I start hating people so much that I can't think of a single person. I'm like, everyone is the worst person alive. So I need to get off for a while to remember that most people are awful, but some are good.
I mean, I just, you know, it's just hard for me to bite my tongue, you know, when I see all the bullshit I see, you know, and
I love it though, Earl. Like, your posts are so crazy, and it's so funny because what I like about it is it's so pointed, but it's so over the top in how you're presenting it that, like, it almost seems like a parody.
I mean, it is, but it isn't. Like,
I know it isn't.
You know, I had like 3 Comedy Central execs call me and like, hey, can we talk? You know, I mean, I don't take back one word I said, but like maybe I could have phrased it differently.
Well, that's exactly how I am. It's like I'm in the same boat as you, where it's like, oh man, the bullshit that I see, my bullshit detector is very good, and what I see, I could eviscerate people, but then it's like, but then I have to deal with that.
Yeah, I mean, you got to be, you know, you're just a small part of the machine, you know, when you're at my level, so you got to, you know, play the game a little more, which I, you know, have struggled with at times.
I've often said that success means you are so successful and have so many successful friends that you can't be honest about all the horrible shit your friends are in. Like you can't like I have friends now who are on terrible TV shows and they ask you to promote it. And which is totally reasonable. You know, you have to help each other, but it's like, "Oh, I'm getting successful because I have to say watch this terrible show." That's what success is a lot of times.
Well, it's just, yeah, you know, I've had certain guests on this podcast. I don't want to mention names, but I knew it would do well because they have a bazillion followers on Instagram, and one, not whatever post on Instagram will get an extra few thousand views.
I know.
You know, and some of my favorite episodes were the least listened to because it was like,
I totally relate to that.
Like Eric Gruber, who I know, Eric, he moved to Amsterdam.
I honestly didn't know that. I haven't seen him in a while. I didn't talk to him a bit.
He's like one of my favorite people on earth, very much like you. He's just funny, he keeps it real. He has no social media, so the episode maybe didn't do the best, but I would rather do that than have like someone who has 1 million followers on Twitter,
right?
Who's just, you know, I sold out.
Exactly. Yeah, it's an interesting human experience to attempt to keep it real and keep it successful. It's a very interesting battle, and it's like it's really hard. Everyone is so much of adulthood is people trying to get you to lie. Don't tell the truth. Don't tell the truth. That hurts too much. Don't do it. And you have to battle to keep it real, but also stay with a house.
Yeah, now
you gotta pay for your house.
But even for you, it's probably 100 times worse than me because, like, you have a show now. You know, you gotta, like, you know, in this day and age of, you know, one wrong tweet or, you know, one wrong remark could get your show canceled.
Absolutely, man. I mean, last year, season 1, there's this like weird Catholic blog called like the Catholic League that came after me. Because I'm like a Jew who's like on TV. I'm always like, there's no God, fuck you, you're all dumb. So they started blogging about our show. So I just started posting the articles and saying crazier and crazier shit. Like, Christ sucked his own dick. Like, that was my thing. And then they wrote a whole article about Jewish comedian says that Christ sucked his own dick. And you got to call Comedy Central and tell them they're awful and they hate Christ. And it's like, first of all, Christ sucking his own dick is not an insult. That's just saying he's flexible. And of course he can suck his own dick. He can do anything. So it's sort of like, you get into but then it's like, now there's like 10 articles on the Catholic League that are talking about how I hate Christianity and Catholicism and Jesus Christ when I'm just like having a good time.
Right.
But it was this whole fucking thing. But yeah, it's an interesting experience attempting to be funny and real and transgressive while not having to deal with bullshit.
Yeah, because I mean, Comedy Central's owned by Viacom, and
exactly,
like they've got sponsors, and
they are paying you.
Yeah, like,
and I need that money.
So you know, it's such so many balls to juggle. You know, to stay true to yourself, which you've always done.
I'm trying, yeah.
But now you got to deal with, you know, the corporate machine.
Bullshit. Oh yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's frustrating, but it's also like, oh, this is part of the reason entertainment is so hard to be successful in, because you have a point of view, you care about the truth, you care about being funny and cool, kind of, and cool in a way that is honest. And everyone's like, yeah, but unless you make us a ton of money doing that, you're going to make us no money doing that. You know what I mean?
Right.
We'll get to. So it's like, it's very complicated. I totally understand now why a lot of hacks get famous. Like, I totally get it. I don't even fucking blame them. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, I get what you're doing. You're just trying to make money, but we don't have those kind of brains, and we can't do that.
I mean, I've tried to varying degrees to what I call palm. You know, I just can't. It's that means I don't make it fully, and who knows what making it is.
Yeah, what does it fucking mean?
I don't know what it
paying
means.
Rent, I think.
Is it having 1 million followers on Instagram? Is it having a show on Comedy Central? Is it having a podcast? I mean, everyone has a podcast, but like, I'm happy with where I'm at. So
yeah, and also it's like I think it's just like paying the rent and like having as good a time as possible. I really think that's what making it is.
I mean, I just want to work with people I love.
Yeah,
this is what I know you love about corporate is like, yeah, I'm sure the hours are crazy, but you're working with best-selling Eddie Pepitone.
100%.
Like that's not work.
No, I agree. If work has to exist, that's not work. That's the best version of work ever.
All right, now comes the part where we have to do what we just talked about, hate doing, but where can people find you online to find out all the info on corporate?
Well, I appreciate that. The main thing I care about is just watching corporate, if you wouldn't mind watching corporate, if you're listening or watching. It's a very good show, I promise. I'm confident in it. It's not bullshit. You can watch it on Comedy Central starting January 15th at 10:30 p.m. It's also online at cc.com. You can watch the first season for free. And I'm on Twitter at Weisman Jake, but you don't have to follow me there.
But do. Because
I think I try to do a good thing.
And you're not on Instagram ananymore.
No, sir.
I love it. Facebook, you don't even bother.
No, not on Facebook.
I love it. I'm begging you guys to watch the corporate. Comedy Central's been very good to me. They do give a lot of people shots. I certainly owe them everything. And Jake is truly, I say this to varying degrees in this podcast, he is one of the good ones in comedy. And any shows you have coming up, like stand-up shows? Or
I'm taking a little, probably another month off, so no. Just it's all about the TV show right now, and then I'll get back to it. But I'll be at the store at some point at like 12:30 a.m.
I love those.
I love them. They're the best.
Because I think for you it'd be like in like Eleanor, Kerrigan, and some of the more aggressive, Brian Holtzman.
100%. Yeah.
Those later spots you can really experiment.
Yeah, and we've been on around the same time at those later spots, and that's to me what I want out of the store. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, just be yourself and be raw and be insane and bomb and sometimes do well, but honestly, just be fucking weird and raw.
Oh, I bombed in the OR the other night like nobody's business.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But I find the OR to be the toughest room I've ever played in.
It's super hard.
Because it's like one of the lineups are so good that you're always following like killers.
Yeah, you're following a lineup of the most successful comedians in the world basically, and then it's like you.
Yeah.
And it's like midnight, and everyone's drunk, and their coke is worn off, and it's like, okay, here's my joke. They don't want to like you.
Okay, we've seen Rogan, Joey Diaz, Mark Maron, Sarah Tiana,
Fahim Anwar, Santino, like
Talia.
Yeah.
Who are you?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm the guy who's going to do a rap joke.
Yeah,
right now.
yeah.
So suck on that. Jake Weisman is the best. Please watch Corporate on Comedy Central, and in about a month, go to the Comedy Store, and we might be back to back, 12:30 in the OR. But that's the way we like it. Jake is one of the good ones. Thank you for doing this.
Thanks for having me, buddy.
Dude, can I take one picture?
Oh, yeah, do whatever you gotta do.
Let me just...
With this?
Yeah, I know.